Welcome to Reggie Sports Talk. I'm your host, RJ Kruger. This past Sunday, there was another great Super Bowl. The Buccaneers were able to hold off the Chiefs offense and beat them 31-9. Today, my guests and I are going to break down the Super Bowl and what each team needs to do to come back and win it next year. My guest is a teacher at Oswego East High School. He has coached football and track and field for multiple years when he's been at Oswego East. Let me introduce you to Erik Aster. Welcome to the show, Erik Aster. How you doing?
Thanks, RJ. Happy to be here. Good to see you. It's an interesting Super Bowl, so I'm ready to get started.
All right, so right off the bat, what'd you think of the game?
I was very surprised. I'm not going to lie. Going into it, I kind of went back and forth, but I had this sneaking suspicion that the Kansas City would kind of just roll, and they've been such a juggernaut the whole year. And I think what surprised me was the game plan on the offensive side for Kansas City. And I know we'll dive into it, but just overall, I didn't feel like they were as prepared for as what Tampa was. So I guess the overall lesson I took away is, man, you should never bet against Tom Brady, right?
Yeah, I agree. I also learned apparently you should never bet against Tom Brady. One other thing that I think really helped the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl is that loss that they took in week 13 when they gave up like 250 receiving yards in the first quarter, because you could just tell their defensive coordinator, Todd Bowles' mind was just like, how do we not let this happen to us again? And he literally made a game plan to stop that, which I will talk about a little bit later. But I thought it was an interesting game. I never thought I would see the day that Patrick Mahomes was held to 9 points and not even throw a touchdown or get in the end zone himself. His offense didn't. I think you could tell he was missing both of his offensive tackles. And I think the Buccaneers defense made a great game plan to stop Mahomes. Like I was saying, in that game, they were able to shut him down and not let him throw 300 yards in the first quarter again.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people didn't really take into account the missing tackles, and so the ability for Tampa Bay's defense to rush with four and not blitz, and sit back in a two deep zone with the free safeties, and you saw a lot of times where Travis Kelce, who's kind of the X factor, who is really I think the one that really glues that offense together. Everyone looks at Tyreek Hill and they're like, he's the Flash, and he's incredible. He's electric, if you will. But really, Travis Kelce is the one that really drives a lot of that offense. And you saw a lot of times they were able to, put one of their faster linebackers on him and then have a safety over the top. And so, he really didn't do a lot. I'm curious, RJ, though, despite the fact that, Kansas City only scored 9 points, a lot of people are talking about Pat Mahomes, effort in his game and how kind of incredible it was given some of the pressure he was in. You saw just some incredible escapes and some throws that frankly hit guys right in the face and they just dropped. So I don't think that my opinion of Patrick Mahomes dropped at all after this game. In fact, I think I'm even more impressed with him. But on the flip side, I would say that, Tom Brady played incredible in the first half, for a guy that is 43 years old, to be that accurate and to still have that arm strength and to be able to dissect defenses, he really didn't have to do much in the second half, but it's just incredible.
Yeah, I agree with you. I tackle a lot of that in my second question, which I'll introduce you to right now. Who do you think's at fault for the Chiefs' loss in this game?
So I hate putting the blame on coaches, but I am gonna kind of put it a little bit on Andy Reid here. He's a Hall of Famer. He's far better of a coach than I'll ever even hope to be. But I think that their game plan offensively was very flawed. And you look at what Tampa Bay was doing and the fact that they were just rushing for, and they stayed in a two deep zone. Meaning they had two safeties that were 12 to 14 yards deep every play, meaning that they really only had 7 guys in the box, and the fact that they would not run the ball. And I know that, they were a little banged up on running back, and, Le'Veon Bell was just a non-factor, but they really didn't even try to establish a run. And I don't know if that was because, they're missing their tackles and they didn't feel strong with their offensive line, but you really got to take sometimes what the defense is giving you. And you saw that like in a bunch of games this year with Kansas City where teams had similar game plans. And, where, their running back, Clyde Lahair, whatever that rookie's name is, had 200 yards of rushing because they were just patient, and they're running that inside zone and they were given what the defense was taking them. And then it just seemed like Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, who's the offensive coordinator, were really, they put the game on Patrick Mahomes' shoulder, which is fair, but trying to push the ball downfield and they really couldn't do it. And I think that they didn't really adjust. I think you made a great point about Todd Bowles, and he had a great game plan, and they just never adjusted. So I put a lot of it on on Andy Reid. I think there were some distractions, and I don't want to, put this out there, but, his son ran into some issues the day before the game. And, you just wonder, how much that impacted him. And obviously we feel terrible for, that situation, but I just didn't feel like that they were ready.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs team wasn't ready, like you said. I don't know if it was all the offense linemen getting their hair cut. I don't know if you saw the photo of the one guy who had half his head shaved and found out his barber tested
Yeah.
positive for COVID.
Right.
I don't know if it's just you hear all this stuff coming out about the Chiefs, the stuff about Andy Reid's son, offensive tackles missing the game, but you didn't hear anything on the Buccaneers side about any distractions. Tom Brady got his team ready. He got him ready to play. When you look at the game itself, I think the defense and offensive linemen were both at fault for this game. The defense couldn't stop the Buccaneers offense. Like you said, Tom Brady played a great first half. He was able to dissect. He saw what defensive backs were having problems guarding their receivers and targeted that more. They had a lot of stupid penalties on defense, kept grabbing. I mean, how hard is it just to practice with tape on your hand and not grab? Because they're just grabbing the whole time.
Yeah. That's a tough one. I mean, I think there was some, 50-50 calls that may have gone either way. But I think you bring up a good point about not a lot of people are talking about the Chiefs defense. It's been more offensive based and their lack of being able to pressure Brady, because that's the way you get to him. As a 43-year-old, he's still good in the pocket, but obviously he's not mobile. And, they really struggled with that. And so I think that was a big factor. Also with Tampa Bay's willingness and ability to be balanced in the running game, like playoff Lenny Fournette, right? Like, his ability to have over 100 yards rushing and to really chug out some yards in the second half. And really that's what, once they got up and then, you're taking some longer possessions, you're running the football, Brady's making a few throws in the second half here and there, but, that was kind of the ball game. So I think that's a good point about the defensive line.
Yeah. Also the offense line, like we said, couldn't stop anyone. I think both of your sons could have got to Patrick Mahomes in that game on Sunday.
Yeah. It was it's tough for an offense. So like when you get down like that and you really haven't established a run game in the second half, like I've coached games, I played in games like that where the game gets away from you and all of a sudden on offense, you're really just one dimensional. Like everybody in the stadium knows, okay, Patrick Mahomes is going to throw it 35 times in the second half. And so as a defensive lineman, you look at JPP or Shaq, those defensive linemen, and they don't have to account for the run game anymore. So they're just firing off the ball and they're going after them. And that's really what you saw. And then, really, I think, Brady wins the MVP, but Devin White, right? The linebacker from Tampa Bay, he runs a 4.3 40. He's 260 pounds. I mean, he is incredible. Just I can remember the play. It was a run play. No, it was a quick pass, and he's sprinting from the other hash all the way to. I mean, just showing just incredible. It's insane. That kid is an all pro, and I think he had an incredible game. And really, I think he was kind of the MVP.
Yeah. We were debating that at my party. Who should have been the MVP? Should it have been Tom Brady, or could they give it to the whole defense or Devin White, like you were saying? Because we think it definitely should have gone to the defense in that game.
Yeah.
So a little quick question here that I have in my notes that I want to hear your opinion on before we get back to the basic ones. Who had the more impressive run, the streaker or Patrick Mahomes for his 500 yards before throwing the ball?
Oh my God. Wasn't that crazy? Right? Like, just some of the stories you're hearing about it. I just, Yeah, like, and clearly the guy was trying to, do something and advertise something because of the way he was dressed. And, I just think those are kind of knuckleheads. And, um, we get a kick out. I always like when they just body slammed, like by the security guard that comes just out of nowhere and just boom, head south. Um, it was interesting though, just in all seriousness, to talk about, the way that Patrick Mahomes was escaping. And there was a lot of people out there saying, well, why didn't he step up? And if you look a lot of the plays, he was getting pressured right up the middle too. So he didn't really have the opportunity to stay in the pocket, and he was trying to escape. And I do think that as the game got away from him, he tried to do more and more though. And, rather than taking some of the throws that were there, he's trying to make plays, which is understandable. So I will say that Patrick Mahomes was probably the more impressive, just because you don't want to encourage people to do that, right?
Yeah, but if what I've heard is true, that man made $374,000 on.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's entirely true. You know, I don't know of a sports book that would put that, and you certainly shouldn't be advertising that then
Oh,
after, because,
oh yeah. So I think I know your answer to this next question just based on how you've been answering the questions. But who do you think's more impressive in that Super Bowl win? Was it the Buccaneers offense or the Buccaneers defense?
I think they complemented each other well. So not to deflect the question, but I think it was the perfect team game, right? Like the way that they played defense in the first half was, again, don't get beat with the big play, okay? Which allowed the offense that, so you saw Kansas City going 3-and-out a bunch, and then it allowed the offense, because of the way that they were playing with some of Brady's, Brady wasn't, chucking it down the field, but he was just taking the throws. He was doing the Brady thing, accurate mid-level throws, finding Gronk, and then the run game. So they were like a perfect complement of each other. If I had to say overall, I would probably say the defense, just because of just how incredible Kansas City's offense has been all year. But that's certainly not to take any credit away from the game plan that Tampa Bay had on offense. They literally played like just about the perfect game, as far as what they did. You had mentioned it. They had their bumps and their ups and downs and throughout the year. And they, look at the run. I mean, they beat Breeze, he beat Aaron Rodgers, and then, beats Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So sometimes it's about your chemistry and when that comes together. And, clearly at the end of the year, Tampa Bay had something figured out. And did you hear the story about Brady, how he was texting his teammates every single night, "We will win," to like the entire team? Like, I mean, if I get a text from Tom Brady about like if Tom Brady texted me and said, "Hey, brush your teeth," I'm running to the bathroom to brush my teeth, right? Like, he just has that. And I think that was really a lot of the X factor in going into that game.
Yeah, you mentioned something, and I agree with you, but also everyone's forgetting about the GOAT that Tom Brady beat in the wild card round, in Taylor Heineke. That man was the best quarterback Tom Brady played this whole postseason.
You mean the legend Taylor Heineke,
The
right?
legend,
Yeah,
Taylor
the
Heineke.
hardest quarterback he faced the entire year.
Yeah.
Good point.
But the Buccaneers defense to me was more impressive in this game. I was just looking at numbers from their first matchup with the Chiefs versus their second. They allowed 462 passing yards in the first game against the Chiefs, in over 200 passing yards in the first quarter, and then they only gave up 270 in the whole Super Bowl. So whatever adjustments their defense made just is very impressive. Their offense had similar numbers in both games. Yeah, they were down like 20-0 at one point, but the Chiefs only won that game like 27-21 the first game. So to me, their offense did exactly the same thing in the Super Bowl in their first game, but their defense was able to adjust and stop over 200 passing yards more in the Super Bowl than they did in the first game, and just eliminate a run game completely.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. I think that first game, you saw Tampa Bay kind of come firing back in the second half and had to pass a little bit more. But I think overall the balance on offense that they had, and they were able to grind out some yards and really limit the number of possessions that Kansas City had. And I think that was a big part too. So I agree with you. I think the defense overall was, the shining star. It's interesting. A lot of people are talking about Todd Bowles now. As a future head coach again, even though he had kind of an opportunity already. And, I always find that interesting is like, these really good coordinators, great game plan, good year overall. And, you didn't have a lot of success as a head coach, why would you leave, right? Like you have an opportunity again next year, but, bigger paycheck, I guess, right?
Yeah. Bigger paycheck would be the only reason why. Not everyone could be the second income like Tom Brady in their
Right.
household.
Right.
um, so the Buccaneers had a great defensive plan for Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. Is this something that other teams can repeat, or do you need the talent that the Buccaneers defense has to really be able to do this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that it was an adjustment of several game plans that we saw this year. You can think about the game that Kansas City played against Washington, against Atlanta, kind of towards the latter half of the year, where it was a very similar game plan where the goal is just don't get beat deep, because that's really Andy Reid is I think he said in the past, when in doubt, chuck it, So I think that it's a good game plan, especially when they're not running the football, because that was what you saw in a few of those games where, and I think it was against Carolina, one of the games this year where they ran for like 220 yards. Um, so yes and no. Like I think that Andy Reid's a good coach, Patrick Mahomes is a good player, Eric Bieniemy is a great coach, and so they'll study tape. So I think it's important in the NFL, and really the master of this is Bill Belichick, and is being able to be multi, meaning like being able to morph into different things, and Kansas City showed that at times this year, on offense, where they're like, okay, we're going to be a power running team this week, and then the next week, and you've seen that in the Patriots dynasties, which every year there's something different, and obviously, Brady was the big driver behind that, but so to answer your question, I think that the basic principles of the plan will be used next year, against, stay deep, play off, match up your corners. Um, but also the big part of that is, do you have a front four that can pass rush and can get to the quarterback without blitzing? And if you don't, like, you look at some teams that just don't have the studs, don't have the big defensive ends, don't have the big rush guys. And that's where really, because you're really forced to blitz. And when you're forced to blitz against, Kansas City, that what happens then is, now Tyreek Hill is soloed up, or Mecole Hardman is soloed up with some cornerback or a slot, and they're running down the field behind you. So there's a lot of factors there. It kind of fits into your personnel and what you have strength wise. So the basics, that yes, but I think there will be a lot of adjustments on both sides.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I think the Chiefs will study this game plan and see what they did wrong and hopefully grow from that. I don't think that this exact game plan should be repeated, but like you said, take the basics of it, put your own twist on it. But what I think this did show is that the Chiefs can be stopped and that Patrick Mahomes is human, um, and not this god tier that everyone's put him on, that he can be stopped and that it is possible to slow down this Kansas City offense to enough to be able to win a game.
Sure.
Um, so how can the Chiefs recover from this loss? How can we see them back in the Super Bowl next year, maybe winning the Super Bowl next year?
Well, I think that this already. Whenever you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, you're going to be in it every year. So if I was a Chiefs fan, I'd be I'd be sad, I'd be upset, but also you have the greatest quarterback in the league coming back. So he just makes everyone around him better. You can pretty much lock them in for 10 to 12 wins next year. No problem here. I think that there is something to be said, though, for the amount of games that they had that were close this year and how they kind of let teams hang around, and going back into the film room and looking at some of those things, and then looking at team culture and really looking at it, whether, obviously they had a lot of hunger their first year as they're, going towards and winning the Super Bowl. And then maybe this year, a little bit of that Super Bowl hangover. Hey, we're good. We know we can turn it on when we want. How hungry were you this year? And is that a factor? They're all professionals and they're getting paid millions of dollars, but there is the human element and the motivation element there. So I think that's something not a lot of people have talked about is, where's your locker room at? What's your culture like? Andrew Reid and their coaching staff, what do they need to do to rebuild some of that motivation and that culture within the locker room? So you're really seeing them, I think it'll be telling next year how they come out, right? first 3, 4, 5 games, are they blowing people out? Are they hungry? Are they just crushing people because they're not satisfied? Those are the marks of really good teams and great teams. And so, I haven't taken too much of a dive into their roster and, like who might be cut and salary cap implications, but presuming or assuming that pretty much all of the main players are back next year, they're in a good spot to go back to the Super Bowl again, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't even think of what you said about their culture and stuff. The first thing I thought of was to get depth on your offensive line. Um, the two backups you had, one of them, someone took a screenshot in that play in Super Bowl 50 when Cam Newton fumbled the football and wasn't able to dive on it. That was that offense lineman who was supposed to be blocking for him, who missed his assignment. And there's a couple of times he missed assignments on Mahomes. I'd cut him right now and I'd go get another offensive lineman. Um, and I also think they need to add another tool to their defense. Don't get me wrong, Chris Jones, Tyrann Matthews, Frank Clark, great players, but the Honey Badger needs some help in that secondary. He's got a couple of guys with him that just don't look like they're ready to compete against prime time wide receivers. And I think getting him some help back there would really tie down the defense and maybe able to help their game plans in the future.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they went defense in the draft this year. I think that's a good point. You know, I'll be honest with you though, like backup tackles are backup tackles for a reason, and you hate to have that happen in a big game like that, but unless you're willing to spend some draft capital and really try to draft, you're getting backups for a reason, but especially at the tackle position where, very rarely are you seeing like quality starting, offensive linemen, at least tackle wise in that fourth, fifth, sixth round, you really need to spend that first, second, third rounder on one of those tackles and try to develop them.
Yeah. So what do the Buccaneers need to do to repeat?
Yeah, I think that they have a good solid game plan. They have a good solid culture. Bruce Arians is a great coach, a lot of respect for him. I wonder how this Super Bowl hangover will hit them. I have a lot of doubts. If you had to ask me, like, which team do you feel like is most likely to repeat, it's Kansas City. It's not even close. I think that Tampa Bay got hot. I think that they came together as a team, but you look at the Super Bowl parade and Tom Brady's, like falling over because he's had a few too many. And so, you can never count out Tom Brady. I think we all learned that this year. His hunger, his drive tends to, but that being said, there were a lot of young players on that team and you never know how, this kind of will hit them in their motivation. And so I think it becomes even more important in that culture piece. I'll be interested to see what happens with Chris Godwin. I know that he's, potentially a franchise tag guy. And so the receiver core and what that might do to them. And I think other people are more high on him than me, to be honest with you. But, where are they going in the draft? They're pretty solid on defense, probably could use a defensive back, just like Kansas City. So yeah, I think the culture piece is another big, like when you win that Super Bowl, how hungry are you for it next year? And so that's where Tom Brady stepping in might be the X factor there.
Yeah, I agree. My big thing I said was listen to Tom Brady and do what he says to do this offseason. I believe him and the Patriots are the last team to win back-to-back Super Bowls. So listen to him. If you look at the Super Bowl, the people that scored in this game were Gronk twice, Antonio Brown, and Leonard Fournette, all people Tom Brady told him to bring in. Um, so listen to Tom Brady this offseason. Give him some insight on the team like you have been. Let him help motivate the guys. And I think especially him saying, hey, this might be my last year. Let's do this one more time. Let me retire on top. Let's do this type thing. That might motivate these people around him and be like, yeah, let's do this for Brady. Look at all the good he's done for us. And let's go out there and win another one.
Yeah, but what's the likelihood that Antonio Brown stays out of trouble in the offseason? And, Leonard Fournette has had his challenges and Gronk, might be, running on some, Caribbean island during the entire offseason, drinking Bang energies all day long and, being the guy. So I think that a lot of what's going to, they need some younger players to continue to develop. You can't keep relying on guys staying healthy like Antonio Brown and even Gronk, our veterans, older guys. I think a lot of next year will depend on Brady staying healthy, right? Like we haven't talked about that. Like he was incredibly healthy this year. I know he's having some knee surgery, soon, but a lot of it goes into luck, and especially when you're relying on older players.
Let me tell you though, if you're leaving me with Mike Evans, Scotty Miller, and Ronald Jones, I'm also very happy. I think they got depth in their offense.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
All right. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, RJ, have a great day. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us this week on Reggie Sports Talk. What a great NFL season this year. Join us next week as we bring back hockey talk. And let me tell you, we have a special guest on the show. We'll see you all then. Have a good one.